Hey everybody, what's up? It's your least favorite Legion main here, back at it again with a brand new Legion discussion video. This time around, I'm going to be talking about the Legion rework that was released in patch 2.7.0. Now, I already know I made a video on the reworked Legion that portrayed him in a rather positive light. Okay, an incredibly positive light. But now that the new Legion outfit is out, so I can 100% prove that I'm playing with the new Legion, I'm here to give my honest, genuine thoughts on the changes. And what are they? I'm mixed about them. There's a few things in here that I absolutely love, but even more things that I absolutely hate. In this video, I'm going to take a look at both. But how about we have some different music this time around? The last one kinda, you know, looped itself over and over again because the video was so long. Nah, too obvious. No, that'll probably get copyright striked. Oh, fuck no. That works. Anyway, let's take a dive into the new Legion changes, what I like, what I don't, and what I think can be done to once more fix Legion. First and foremost, let's get the good news in here first. Three big changes I love the most about the Legion are his base movement speed buff, the duration increase to Frenzy, and the rework to Deep Wound. Now, I'm practically hard for the 115 movement speed, as shown in my first video on the new Legion. I basically portrayed this change as turning Legion into a real killer, and I shouldn't have to explain why this buff is so great, especially considering I already did in my last video on Legion. Being an M1 killer, Legion was totally crippled by being 110% being 110% movement speed, and undoing that AIDS issue was 110% a blessing. Okay, I'll show myself out. The duration to Frenzy was a much needed buff that just makes it play so much better. The new Frenzy is 2/3 longer than the old one, going from 6 to 10 seconds, much more time to gather information from Killer Instinct, and much more time to actually catch up to survivors. Even if it wasn't a huge buff, which it is, it still nonetheless feels so much better to play. And finally, the Deep Wound changes. I was a massive hater of how old Deep Wound was so exploitable that half the time you went out of your way to not abuse the mechanic, you abused it anyway. It was that bad. Yeah, that's all I have to say. They removed an abusable mechanic. Nothing to complain about in that regard. But prepare your anus for what I do have to complain about, because it's a lot. Legion's base ability to chase was what primarily got buffed here. Now, in return, he received a lot of compensation nerfs. And holy shit, does Frenzy suck dick! What the fuck?! Yeah, the new Frenzy is kinda not good. And considering it was already not good, well, shit. But what makes the new Frenzy so bad? Lower speed, terrible recharge, and AIDS cooldown, still not being good at chaining hits, Deep Wound, Sex, Cock, Vault, and Pellets, now effective at blocking Frenzy for some fucking reason. Basically, Frenzy is too easy to counter, still bad at chaining hits, has too little usage, and Deep Wound isn't a threat anymore. Now wait a minute, Mither. Did you just say the new Deep Wound is great? Yeah, for lack of exploiting, but now the status effect itself is just underwhelming. See, Deep Wound is like the pig's traps. It's not good because of what it does to survivors, it's good because of what it can do to survivors, forcing them to do something other than generators, in this case, mending. But the problem is, Deep Wound is so easy to prevent from ticking down, and mending is so quick and painless, that it really isn't a threat anymore. So, basically what happened is, Deep Wound now doesn't go down as long as you're in the Legion's heartbeat range, which was buffed to that of a normal killer of 32 meters. In addition, mending prevents the timer from going down as you're doing it. So, again, that's great for removing the exploit, but since now all you have to do to prevent the timer from going down is be within a 32 meter radius of the Legion, if he's stuck chasing someone else within that radius, you literally don't need to mend. You can just do gens as if you aren't on a bleed out timer, because at that point, well, you basically aren't. It's such a small threat, and for such a small reward as well. Forcing survivors to take a mere 15 seconds to mend, something that they don't even need to do right away, is just bad. Deep Wound is bad. It sucks. But what about Frenzy? It can still chain hits, right? Not really. It really can't. And to prove it, I'll do the math. So because of our first big nerf, reducing Frenzy's movement speed, the new Feral Frenzy moves at 5 meters per second and a running Survivor moves at 4 meters per second. This means that while chasing after a running Survivor, a Frenzying Legion catches up at a rate of 1 meter per second. This means that with a 10-second Frenzy, all a Survivor has to do to prevent a Legion from chaining hits is be more than 10 meters away from him when the Frenzy starts. No exhaustion perks, no loops, just running in a straight line. Man, Frenzy is so good at chaining hits, guys! He really is the best killer in the game! And it wouldn't even be so bad if it weren't for all the other nerfs that were applied, but for some fucking reason, they made Frenzy's window and pallet vaults ungodly slow to the point that they are now effective blockades against a Frenzy. The ability to vault is practically pointless right now. Let me paint a picture for you. The new pallet vault is 1.35 seconds long. That means if Legion chooses to vault over it, which takes so long that the Survivor could run far enough around the loop to literally loop a Frenzying Legion, which I have done myself by holding W around an unsafe pallet. But even if they decide to try and juke the Legion by vaulting over it, the Legion has two options. 1, they can vault back over the pallet and waste their own time, or 2, they can do a pixel-perfect 180 flick shot to spin around and hit the Survivor before they're too far across the pallet for the hit to connect, which honestly is more fucking difficult than landing Nurse Blinks. Trust me, I would know. And if you miss that hit, well, you're fucked, because missing a Frenzy attack now forces you into a fatigue. I would love that missed attack change if it was just that missed attack change. People should be punished for being overzealous and reckless in Frenzy, but the problem is the other nerfs that come with it, the nerfs to fatigue. See, they increased the fatigue time to 4 seconds, and also made the fatigue tunnel vision ridiculously vomit-inducing, but more importantly, they made it so you can only use Frenzy once it's fully charged, like Spirit. And it takes 20 seconds to recharge. A power that is literally just M1 on steroids takes 20 seconds to be used again. This nerf in and of itself is easily the worst one of the bunch. The combination of Frenzy's inability to chain hits combined with this lack of ability to follow up a first Frenzy with the second one if the Survivor that avoided it was in a compromising position means that Frenzy is so bad at rapidly injuring multiple people that a lot of players say that the new Frenzy is only good for a free first hit against healthy Survivors. Now, I think this is a gross exaggeration, but the new Frenzy is pretty bad. It's really bad. It can barely do its job anymore against semi-competent Survivors. In short, they made Frenzy from a chase/utility hybrid power into just a utility power, and then nerfed the fuck out of its utility. Good thinking, devs. And you know what pisses me off too? The fact that all the whiny Survivor mains on the Dead by Daylight forums will say that Legion is fine because that free first hit is too OP. But watch it happen. I expect nothing less from our wonderful community. So what can be done to fix this? Well, I have a few ideas. We don't need to give Legion any ridiculous buffs. All we need to do is give him reliable access to a reliable power. Frenzy needs to be better at rapidly injuring Survivors, and Deep Wound needs to be a threat. And I think I know just what can be done to make that a reality. Firstly, revert the changes to Feral Frenzy's vault and movement speed. The whole point of those mechanics was to prevent holding W in a straight line or holding W around loops from being highly effective blockades. Secondly, allow Legion to use Frenzy after 25% of it has been charged rather than 100%. This means that at the bare minimum, you have to wait 5 seconds for 2.5 seconds of Frenzy. That should be just enough to allow the Legion to punish a Survivor who escaped their first Frenzy, but only if they're in a compromising position. Thirdly, reduce the fatigue down to 3.3 seconds and reduce that goddamn fatigue vision. Like, holy shit, man, I can barely play this fucker without Shadowboard. Do you know how useless of a perk Shadowboard is? Fourthly, reduce the Legion's terror radius to 28 meters. Still a large enough TR to give Survivors a good heads up, but still should be able to hit that sweet spot that combines an effective Killer Instinct range with a smaller area of effect for essentially Deep Wound immunity. And finally, make Deep Wound more dynamic. Reduce the self-mend time to 12 seconds while in the Legion's terror radius, but increase it to 20 seconds when outside of it. Make it more interesting. Encourage Survivors to mend quickly by rewarding them for making the risky play of mending near the Legion, and make it more tedious to deal with if they don't. Make it more than just hold M1 when away from the Legion for 25 seconds. And that's it, really. Simple number tweaks. Just a few changes to some stats, and in my opinion, Legion can be totally golden. He'd be effective at spreading pressure, stalling the game, and being an incredibly capable M1 killer. It really wouldn't take much to make Legion way better and more engaging than he currently is. This rework was absolutely a step in the right direction. It's just that the compensation nerfs were far, far too much. Legion is totally capable of being made into an epic gamer killer. Let's bring that about, guys. I hope you enjoyed my updated video on Legion balance, and remember, it's okay to main Legion.